What would you do if a young waitress corrected a billionaire's contract in a dusty diner and that single moment turned her into the woman who redefined justice across the nation? The hum of the Old Town Cafe was warm and familiar. Forks clinked against chipped plates. The jukebox at the far end softly played a Motown tune from a better decade. Jasmine Carter refilled the third pot of coffee that night, her faded apron faintly smelling of hash browns and burnt toast. When the bell over the door jingled, no one looked up. Not until he stepped in. He wore a slate-grey coat folded over one arm and a navy suit crisp enough to slice air. There was something in the way he carried himself, like he wasn't used to waiting for things. Or people. He took a booth by the window without a word. Jasmine poured him a cup of black coffee, no questions, no sugar. As she set it down, she noticed a thick stack of papers beside him. Red marks bled along the margins like wounds. "You look like you're wrestling with a bear," she said softly. He didn't look up. "It's a contract. You wouldn't understand." She gave a small smile. "I might," he snapped. He slapped the contract onto the counter, his palm flat and loud. "If you're so damn smart, then translate this." The cafe fell silent. Even the air seemed to pause, but Jasmine didn't flinch. She wiped her hands and picked up the contract like it was just another breakfast order. 300 pages. A merger deal between two tech giants, own of them his. Legal language so thick, even seasoned attorneys would drown in it. She turned a few pages, her brow relaxed, fingers moving like she'd done this before. And then she pointed. "This clause here, if your stock drops more than 7% after the merger is announced, they can walk." "No reason needed." His eyes narrowed. "That's not wrong. And here 400 million locked in escrow with no release triggers. That's not protection. That's leverage. They can bleed you dry." He leaned in slightly, almost despite himself. "How do you know all this?" "I used to read stuff like this in class," she said quietly. "Pre-law at Emory, before my mom got sick, before I had to start flipping pancakes to pay rent." Something shifted in his face. She wasn't bluffing. Her voice was calm, her hands steady, and she had just exposed weaknesses his corporate legal team missed. "I'm surprised you stayed in this town," he said dryly. "I'm surprised you came in here thinking no one in this diner could be smarter than you." The line landed, sharp and clean. He blinked. She handed the contract back across the counter. "You should fix Clause 7C and tie the escrow to deliverables. Otherwise, they'll hit you where it hurts." He studied her for a long moment. "You serious?" "I was serious before you insulted me. I'm just being generous now." He looked down at the pages again, then at her notes, scribbled neatly on the back of a paper napkin, surgical. Precise. "Can I buy you a coffee?" She glanced at the full cup already sitting cold beside him. "You already did." And with that, Jasmine turned and walked back toward the kitchen. Head high, steps steady, he watched her go. And for the first time in weeks, the words on that contract didn't look like fog. They made sense now, and not because of him. He didn't know it yet, but the most important meeting of his life hadn't happened in a boardroom. It had just taken place over black coffee and a side of humility. The next night he came back, same table, same suit. Different look in his eyes. He didn't order coffee this time. Just sat there with the contract open in front of him, flipping pages like they might start speaking English if he stared hard enough. Jasmine didn't speak right away. She had tables to bus, orders to take. But her eyes caught his once, and she saw it curiosity. Maybe even humility. When the dinner rush slowed, she brought him water. "You back for the eggs, or back to get schooled again?" she asked with a slight grin. He chuckled. "Not much, but enough. Back for you," he said plainly. That made her pause. She leaned on the counter, arms crossed. "I'm working." "I know," he said. "This won't take long. I just wanted to say thank you. You saved me from a potential disaster." "Millions, at least." She blinked slowly. You sure you want to be seen thanking a waitress? That's the thing, he said, sliding over the contract. I'm not sure you are just a waitress. She tilted her head. Then what do you think I am? Someone who understands systems, who sees through language, who, given the right chance, could outthink half the legal team at Walker Systems. She didn't flinch. You offering me a job? Not exactly, he said. I'm offering you a conversation. Off the clock. Just coffee. My treat this time. No suits, no condescension. She studied him for a beat. Then she nodded. Come back at 10. That's when my shift ends. If you're serious, you'll wait. I'm serious, he replied. Then I guess we'll see, she said, already turning away. He waited. By 10 o'clock, the cafe had mostly cleared out. The old veterans who lingered by the jukebox were gone. The hum of the dishwasher was the only sound left. Jasmine came out of the back, apron off, hair down. She slid into the booth across from him like it was any other late-night diner moment. You're persistent, she said. I'm curious. About what? How you got here. How someone like you, someone who thinks like you, ends up waiting tables instead of, I don't know, clerking for a federal judge. She looked down, fingers tracing the edge of the table. Life doesn't follow a script, Mr. Walker. I had a plan. Full ride to Emory. Pre-law, mock trial champ. She paused, her voice steady. Then my mum's kidneys failed. Dialysis 3 times a week. Medicaid barely covered it. My little brother started getting into fights at school. Bills piled up. School had to wait. There was no bitterness in her tone, just truth. I kept studying on my own. Law journals, blogs, anything I could find. I even started coding, working on this idea for a legal literacy app. Simple stuff, interactive contracts, translation tools for teenagers who don't understand what they're signing. Ethan was quiet. She continued, but who's going to take a waitress with no degree seriously? I would, he said. She raised a brow. You? The guy who called me sweetheart and told me to stick to pouring coffee? His jaw clenched. I deserved that. Yes, she said calmly. But I'm not stupid, he added. I've built a career spotting ideas before they go mainstream. And Jasmine, what I saw in you the other night, that wasn't luck. That was brilliance. She didn't smile. Not yet. I'm not asking for charity, she said. Good, he replied. I'm not offering it. I'm offering partnership. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small folder. Inside were mock-ups, designs, branding, early concept sketches. The title read, Lawbridge. I want to build this with you. Real developers, real backing, you lead. I fund. She stared at the folder. You know what the hardest part of being invisible is? She said softly. It's not that people don't see you. It's that they look right at you and decide you're not worth seeing. He didn't interrupt. Then let's make them look again, he said. Their eyes met. Okay, she replied, but I don't want to be your project. I want to be your equal. You will be, he promised. Outside, the streetlights buzzed, but inside that booth, something louder sparked. Not love. Not yet, but possibility. For the first time in a long time, Jasmine felt like her ideas weren't just valid. They were real, they mattered, and Ethan? He felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, not in numbers, but in people. They clinked 2 coffee mugs together. No toast. No speech. Just a soft clink between equals. The deal was sealed. And a revolution's mall, quiet, undeniable, had just begun. Jasmine Carter stood outside Whitmore Tower, 32 floors of glass and steel, rising like a monument to people who didn't look like her. She smoothed the collar of her thrifted navy blouse, the one without a label. Her hands gripped a worn leather binder, the same one she used to carry waitress orders, now filled with sketches, research, and one shaky dream. Inside, the air smelled like money and lemon polish. The receptionist looked up from behind a marble desk, eyes flicking from Jasmine's sneakers to her face. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Mr. Walker," Jasmine said, keeping her voice even. The woman hesitated, fingers poised over the keyboard. "Name?" "Jasmine Carter." Pause. A blink. "The waitress?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "Still do weekends at Old Town. The tips are better than you think." A security badge was finally printed, reluctantly. She clipped it to her blouse and stepped toward the elevator like it wasn't her first time doing this. But it was. On the 29th floor, the walls were glass, the floor gleamed like a mirror, and the silence was heavy. Ethan Walker stood waiting in the boardroom, sleeves rolled, tablet in hand. He smiled, a real one. "Come on in, it's just us, just us." Like that erased the stares from the front desk, the locked looks in the elevator. Jasmine walked in, sat down, and opened her binder. "I brought notes," she said. Ethan gestured toward the screen on the wall. "I had our dev team mock up some early design concepts." She didn't look. Not yet. "Before we get into aesthetics," she said, "I want to talk about core values." Ethan leaned forward. "Go on." "This app has to be visually accessible, clean, no legalese. It needs to work for high schoolers, immigrants, single parents, people who don't have time to decode paragraph 12, section 4, subpart B." He nodded, quietly impressed. "I want scenarios," she continued. "What happens when you're pulled over, evicted, or denied a job? Not hypotheticals. Real stories, real consequences. And the language? Plain. Simple. No more law as a weapon. This should be a flashlight." Ethan sat back, folding his arms. "You think of all this on your own?" "I listen," she said. "And I've been poor. That's a hell of an education." The room fell quiet. Until a knock broke the moment. Gerald Stone stepped inside, Senior VP of Legal Affairs. Grey suit, colder eyes. The kind of man who never asked twice and never expected to be corrected. His gaze dropped to Jasmine. "Thought this was a closed session." "It is," Ethan replied. "Jasmine's part of this now." Gerald forced a tight smile. "Right." "The waitress." Jasmine held his stare. "Still better at reading contracts than your department." His smirk faltered. Ethan stood up, tired of it already. "Gerald, she found 2 kill clauses your entire team missed." "She's very intuitive," Gerald said, voice syrupy with condescension. "She's leading this project," Ethan said firmly. "I want your team supporting her. Legal vetting, IP frameworks, whatever she needs." Gerald raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "I'm not in the habit of joking when there are 9 figures involved." Gerald nodded. "Of course. We'll be cooperative." But his eyes said something else entirely. After he left, Jasmine looked down at the table. "He's not going to help me." "He's going to stall me," Ethan sighed. "He's old school." "No," she said. "He's a gatekeeper. And I'm not the kind of person he ever imagined walking through the gate." "You want me to fire him?" She met Ethan's eyes. "No. I want to earn this. I want to win it on the record." He nodded. "Then what do you need from me?" "Backup. Quiet. Strong. Immediate." "You've got it," he said. That night, Jasmine sat on the floor of her small apartment, laptop in her lap, binder open beside her. Her brother Jordan sprawled on the couch behind her, doing homework, chewing his pencil like it might give him answers. Their mum, Angela, dozed in a recliner nearby, a heating pad humming under her hip. The place smelled of spaghetti, Vicks, and ambition. On the coffee table, one ancient Chromebook, held together with duct tape and prayer. Jasmine clicked through layout sketches, UI samples, and code blocks borrowed from open-source forums. Her brain throbbed, but she kept going. "Think they'll let you finish it?" Jordan asked suddenly. She looked up. "Finish what?" "The app." "The court stuff. You think those rich guys are really going to let you? She stared at him. I'm not waiting for permission, she said. He looked at her like that was a kind of magic, then nodded and went back to math. The first signs were subtle. A meeting Jasmine wasn't invited to, an email thread that conveniently left her name out. Then her ID badge stopped working at the lab. She stood at the front desk, trying to stay calm while the receptionist tapped on her keyboard with all the urgency of a sleeping cat. You're not in the system this week, the woman said flatly. That's not possible, Jasmine replied. I've got a standing pass. Sorry, you'll need clearance. It took over an hour for someone from facilities to let her in. By the time she entered the innovation lab, the weekly team meeting had already started, without her. Gerald Stone was at the whiteboard, dry erase marker in hand, already halfway through outlining a new rollout strategy. Jasmine quietly found a seat. He didn't acknowledge her. We're concerned about liability, he was saying. The language in the app could be interpreted as legal advice. Jasmine raised her hand. It's not legal advice, she said. It's legal education. Every scenario is based on public law and coded with disclaimers. Gerald smiled without warmth, the kind of smile used at charity galas and chess tournaments. Even so, the company has a reputation to protect. We may want to scale back the school outreach and limit this to private beta testing for now. No, Jasmine said. Calm, clear. Those students are the reason this exists. Scaling back outreach doesn't protect the company, it protects the status quo. A few heads turned. Gerald capped his marker, took a step closer. Look, Miss Carter, we all admire your passion, but this isn't a college project. There are boundaries, legal, professional, that you may not fully understand. I understand boundaries just fine, she replied. I've lived inside them my whole life. Silence. He turned back to the board, saying nothing more. But she knew this wasn't about risk management, it was sabotage. Dressed in suits and protocol. That evening, Jasmine marched into Ethan's office. He was alone, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by reports. They're trying to suffocate it, she said, dropping her bag on the chair across from him. Who? Gerald. Maybe the board. Maybe both. She laid it out, being locked out, the secret meetings, the plan to gut school outreach. Ethan rubbed his temple. Gerald's been with me since the beginning. He's cautious, but he's not malicious. No, Jasmine said. He's afraid. Of what? Of a black girl with no degree outshining his entire department, of someone he can't control. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then finally he looked up. You want me to fire him? No, she said. I don't want this handed to me. I want to earn it, but when I ask for something, I need to know you've got my back. He nodded. You have it. The next morning, Jasmine showed up early. She brought donuts, apple fritters, glazed twists, powdered sugar bombs. She set the box on the table, plugged in her laptop, and began preparing her presentation. No one said a word. When the team finally gathered, she didn't wait for permission. I want to show you what Lawbridge really is, she said. Not from a legal perspective, from a human one. She played a short video. A student from Langston Prep appeared on screen. This app helped my mum understand the lease she signed, he said. We stopped an eviction. I didn't know apps could do that. Next, a janitor explained how he used the app to fight an illegal paycheck deduction. A single mum who avoided a payday loan trap. Real faces. Real stories? The room was quiet. Then halfway through the video, Gerald entered. Arms crossed. Expression unreadable. Jasmine didn't acknowledge him. This, she said, pointing to the screen, is why I'm not stepping back. You don't build change by playing it safe. You build it by making people uncomfortable and refusing to disappear. Gerald raised a hand. May I say something? No, she said. He froze. I'm not finished. He lowered his hand. Said nothing. Then Ethan entered. He didn't speak right away. just walked to the front of the room and stood beside Jasmine. "I've seen what she's building," he said, "and I've never been more certain of anything." He turned to the team. "This company was founded on risk. If we back down now, we betray that legacy." Gerald said nothing. After the meeting, several team members approached Jasmine. Some shook her hand. Others offered quiet nods. One developer said, "My cousin's going through a lease issue. Let me know if I can help." That night, as she walked home beneath the humming streetlights, Jasmine thought about power. Not the kind wielded in boardrooms. The kind you build day by day through action, trust, and refusing to fold. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was rewriting the terms. The prototype was born on a quiet Sunday morning just after sunrise. Jasmine Carter was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, still in her pajamas, with a cold cup of instant coffee beside her and a laptop that had been duct-taped so many times it looked like a science experiment. Her brother Jordan snored softly on the couch, a notebook resting on his chest. On the screen in front of her, the app finally blinked to life. It wasn't pretty. The fonts were uneven. The animation lagged. The interface still had rough edges. But it worked. She hit Begin. A title screen appeared with a gavel icon, something she'd designed at 2 a.m. the week before. The first scenario loaded. You've just been pulled over by a police officer. What are your rights? Beneath the text were 3 choices. Say nothing. Ask why you were stopped. Reach for your license. Each choice triggered a short, animated outcome. Some de-escalated, some didn't. Every result ended with a plain language explanation and a link to the relevant law. The voiceover was hers, recorded in her bedroom at midnight, clear, calm, not robotic. Jasmine leaned back and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "It lives," she whispered to herself. At 9:07 a.m., she sent Ethan Walker a simple email. No subject line. No fanfare, just a link and 2 words, first breath. 30 minutes later, her phone rang. "Is this real?" he asked, almost out of breath. "You tell me," she replied. "I've never seen anything like this," he said. "You made this on a Chromebook?" "Yeah," she said, "and half a bottle of instant coffee." He laughed softly. "I'm showing this to the UX team today. With your permission." "You don't need my permission," she said. "You need my voice in the room." That afternoon, Jasmine walked into the Whitmore Tech Innovation Lab with her binder tucked under one arm and a USB drive in her pocket. She was met with polite nods, a few curious stares. But no one challenged her, until she plugged in her laptop and launched the demo. Then the room fell silent. For 15 minutes, all they heard was the click of her mouse and the voice from the app voice walking users through everyday legal scenarios. What to do when a landlord withholds your deposit. How to contest a wage deduction. How to understand a loan contract before you sign. At the end, one of the developers leaned forward. "We can polish the animations," he said, "but the logic flow, it's tight." Another asked, "Where'd you learn UX?" Jasmine shrugged. "From mistakes and watching people get hurt when they don't know their rights." From that moment on, she became a fixture in the lab. She joined storyboarding sessions, she reviewed interface flows, she sketched redesigns on napkins and argued over button placement at 10 p.m. Over vending machine snacks. She was younger than everyone in the room, less formally educated, and the only black woman most of them had ever seen lead a product meeting. But none of that stopped her. She led with curiosity, not ego. She listened more than she spoke, and every suggestion came back to one question. Will this help someone understand what they're signing? Ethan watched it all happen from the edge of the room. He didn't interfere. He backed her quietly, consistently, but even he seemed surprised at how fast the team began rallying behind her. 2 weeks in, Jasmine proposed the first real-world test. Let's pilot it in high schools, she said. Start with 3. We'll print flyers, set up a QR code, gather feedback. Gerald Stone sent back a red-lined version of her proposal with a note that read, "Too ambitious. Recommend scaling back to protect liability." She read the edits, then printed out both versions, his and hers, and walked straight to Ethan's office. "I'm not scaling back," she said, placing the documents on his desk. He read them both quietly. "You're right," he said. "We go with your version." She blinked. "That easy?" He smiled slightly. "No, but that necessary." She smiled too, a small one. "The kind you save for quiet victories." At the door she paused. "He's going to keep trying to block me," she said. "I know," Ethan replied. "Then be ready." "I'm always ready." As she stepped into the elevator, she realized something had shifted. Not just in how they saw her, but in how she saw herself. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was building. And no one, not a VP, not a boardroom, not a broken system, was going to stop her now. Jasmine Carter never raised her voice. She didn't need to. The more time she spent inside the glass walls of the Whitmore Tech Innovation Lab, the more people leaned in when she spoke. Not because she demanded it, but because what she said always cut through the noise. Her name wasn't on the executive roster. She didn't have a degree or a corner office, but she had something most people in the building had forgotten how to recognize: vision. And the grit to follow it through. She came in early, stayed late, and led huddles over vending machine coffee and half-eaten muffins. When the junior designers stumbled through ideas, she listened. When the developers debated logic paths, she asked questions no one else did. What happens when the user doesn't speak English? Will this screen still make sense at 2 a.m. in a crisis? What does this legal clause actually feel like when you're the one signing it? The app began to evolve, not into a sleek corporate tool, but into something real. Alive. Human. Lawbridge wasn't just teaching laws. It was showing people the walls they'd never been told they could climb. Her leadership style puzzled people at first. She didn't bark orders. She didn't flex authority. She invited. She encouraged developers to test unproven features. She handed sticky notes to interns and asked, "What's missing here?" She made space where no one expected it and filled it with trust. Ethan Walker watched it all, quietly amazed. He'd built $1 billion company on speed, sharpness, and strategy. But Jasmine, she was building something slower, deeper. She was building belief. One morning, she brought in printed copies of hand-drawn storyboards. "Forget the screen for a minute," she said. "Let's walk through this like someone who's never used an app before, who's scared, who's been burned." She laid out panels on a whiteboard like comic strips. A teenager pulled over in his mom's car. A woman evicted because she didn't understand a lease clause. A fast food worker charged fees for a payday loan he never agreed to. Each panel ended with a question. What could they have known that would have changed the outcome? That question changed everything. Ben Ramirez, a UX engineer who'd mostly stayed quiet, raised his hand. "We're designing backwards," he said. "We keep trying to teach the law." But Jasmine's teaching power. The room stilled, and then it shifted. People began staying after hours not for deadlines, but because they wanted to. Developers started proposing features Jasmine had only dreamed of: translation toggles, accessibility tools, offline mode. They weren't just building an app anymore, they were building a lifeline. One night, around 10:30 p.m., Jasmine was still sketching UI flows when Ben wandered over with a question about screen transitions. Halfway through his sentence, he stopped and said, "Hey, why aren't you in charge of more things around here?" Jasmine looked up, caught off guard. "You're already leading," he added. "It just doesn't say it on the org chart." She laughed softly. "Maybe it doesn't need to." But the truth lingered. The team was following her, not because they were told to, but because they chose to. Even Gerald Stone, ever the skeptic, had stopped showing up to meetings just to challenge her. He still didn't offer praise, but he also stopped getting in her way. That was progress. Then came the school pilot. Jasmine selected 3 high schools across Atlanta, each with a different story, but the same problem: students who didn't know their rights. She and Jordan printed flyers, created QR codes, and handed them out outside football games, bus stops, and late-night diners. The first pilot was at Langston Prep. Jasmine wore a blazer over her diner uniform. It was the only professional jacket she owned. She stood in front of 30 seniors in a worn-out classroom with flickering lights and said, "You ever been told to sign something and had no idea what it meant?" Several hands went up. One girl in the back said, "All the time. Rent stuff, school papers, you just sign or else." Jasmine nodded. "That's what I thought until I realized you're allowed to ask. You're allowed to know." She showed them how Lawbridge worked. The classroom leaned forward, not because they had to, but because they'd never seen anything like it. Afterward, one boy lingered behind, tall, quiet, a scar on his cheek. "You really made this?" he asked. "Every word," Jasmine said. He hesitated, then whispered, "My mom signed some papers last year. Now we're getting evicted." She didn't understand them. Jasmine felt her chest tighten. "Bring them," she said. "We'll go through them together." He nodded. "No one's ever talked to us like we matter." That night, Jasmine sat on the fire escape of her apartment building. The air smelled like fried chicken and rain. She looked out over her city, and felt something settle inside her. This wasn't just tech, this was truth, made visible, made useful. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "You started something, Jasmine, do you realize that?" She stared at the screen, then typed back, "It's not just mine. It belongs to every kid who ever signed something they didn't understand." The attention came like a storm. First, it was just a headline buried on a tech blog. Waitress turned legal prodigy? Whitmore Tech bets big on unlikely talent. Then came the tweets. Then LinkedIn. Then think pieces. Some called her the future. Others called her a fluke. "Brilliant mind from the margins," one article praised. "Is this what Silicon Valley's become?" another sneered. Jasmine tried to ignore it. She buried herself in final bug fixes. She rechecked every scenario, every disclaimer. She coached the pilot team on student feedback and triple-tested the app's accessibility features. But the noise kept growing. Then came the email. Subject: Urgent investor concerns. It was from Whitmore's Investor Relations Office. Jasmine opened it and read, twice. "Several major stakeholders have voiced discomfort with your central role in the product's leadership. They've requested clarification on your credentials and whether you have the experience to helm a launch of this magnitude." She sat there for a long time. Not shocked. Just tired. Later that evening, she was called into a closed-door meeting. Ethan was there. So was Gerald Stone, the legal counsel Linda Tran, and 2 members of the board. It didn't feel like a meeting. It felt like a trial. "We're not questioning your intelligence," said a man in a pinstripe suit, Princeton lapel pin gleaming. "But this launch is extremely high profile. No degree, no corporate background investors are understandably uneasy." Jasmine folded her hands in her lap. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "You're not uneasy because I'm unqualified. You're uneasy because I don't look the way you expect success to look." The man flinched. "That's not fair." "No," she replied. "It's accurate." Linda Tran, who'd remained silent, finally spoke. "From a legal standpoint, there's no issue. Jasmine's title is correct. Her work is documented. Her IP is filed. The resistance here is emotional, not structural." Then Ethan stood. "I hired Jasmine because she saw what no one else could. She saved this company from a billion-dollar trap. She turned a demo into a movement. If you're asking me to pick between her and a handful of donors afraid of change, then I choose her." Silence. Thick. Heavy. Jasmine looked down. Her hands were trembling. She folded them tighter. After the meeting, Ethan found her in the hallway. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said honestly. He nodded. "Good." "You shouldn't be. You're carrying more than anyone else in that room, and they still don't see it." "Oh, they see me," she whispered. "They're just terrified of what I mean." That night she returned to the lab, but she didn't touch her laptop. She sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. Her phone buzzed. Jordan. "Saw the article. Don't let 'em talk slick. You're the real deal." She smiled. Just a little, then stood, walked to the whiteboard, and wrote 3 words in big, bold marker. "Launch on time." The next morning, Whitmore Tech's PR team handed her a revised script for the announcement event. Polished. Safe. Empty. She read it once. Then handed it back. "No," she said. "We just want to avoid controversy," one of them offered carefully. "Justice is always controversial," she replied. That night, she wrote her own speech. Not for approval, for truth. The day of the launch, the auditorium was packed. Reporters, school officials, investors, Whitmore Tech executives. Ethan gave a short introduction. Then Jasmine walked on stage. No music. No lights, just her and a microphone. "My name is Jasmine Carter," she began. "I was raised 6 blocks from here. I've waited tables, changed bandages on my mother's back, and helped my brother stay in school. And now, I've helped build something that doesn't belong to a boardroom." She paused. "It belongs to every person who ever signed something they didn't understand and paid the price for it." She walked the room through what Lawbridge does, not as a developer, as someone who's lived the questions it answers. "This isn't about me," she said. "I don't need applause. I need you to listen. Because when people get access to the tools they were never meant to touch, they start standing taller." She ended simply. "Justice shouldn't be reserved for the fluent. It belongs to all of us." Silence. Then, thunderous applause. Phones flashed, cameras rolled, voices rose. "And Jasmine?" She didn't smile, not yet. There was still work to do. It started with a feeling. Jasmine Carter was sitting at her kitchen table past midnight. The glow from her laptop cast pale blue shadows against the yellowed paint on the walls. Jordan was on the floor, headphones in, doing his geometry homework. Their mum, Angela, was asleep in the next room, her breathing shallow but steady. The merger documents were open on the screen again. Whitmore Tech, Kessler Solutions. A deal worth billions. She'd already reviewed the final draft, more than once. But something wasn't sitting right. She scrolled back to a section she'd skimmed earlier. Schedule F contingency triggers. She read it again. Then again. Her eyes stopped on one sentence. In the event of a market-based valuation event resulting in a temporary decline exceeding 7% of pre-merger market cap, Kessler retains the right to withdraw from the agreement without penalty. She narrowed her eyes. Temporary? That word hadn't been there before. "Jordan," she said, gently pulling a headphone from his ear. "Look at this line." He leaned over. "Jasmine, I'm barely passing English." She smiled slightly. "Just tell me what this sounds like." He read the line slowly. "So, if the stock drops, even for a little while, they can back out?" "Exactly," she said. "Even for a day." Jordan blinked. "That's messed up." "Yeah," she whispered. "It is." By morning, Jasmine was at Whitmore Tower by 6:45 a.m. She barely touched her coffee. As soon as the lobby opened, she headed straight to the legal archives. With help from a half-asleep intern, she pulled up every version of the contract. Early drafts. No temporary. The clause was clear, time-bound, and protected both parties. But 3 weeks ago, in a revision from Kessler's legal team, One word had slipped in, just one, enough to trigger a loophole that could cost Whitmore Tech everything. At 8:01 a.m., she walked into Ethan Walker's office without knocking. He was on the phone. Paused when he saw her face. "I need 5 minutes," she said. He hung up. "What is it?" She placed the printed page in front of him. "This clause, Schedule F." "It's a trap." He scanned it, frowning. "I've seen this. Gerald's team reviewed it. They skimmed it. Or worse, they missed it." He looked closer. "They can walk away with no penalty if our stock dips even briefly. One rumor. One bad news cycle. They pull out, we bleed." Ethan stood. His face changed slowly, concern, disbelief, then fury. "Why would they add this last minute?" "Because they're playing you," Jasmine said. "They want you to announce the deal, trigger a market jump, then tank it with a fake leak. One dip and they're out, no payout, no damage. You take the fall." He stared at her. "Jesus." Jasmine kept her voice low. "You either renegotiate this now, or get ready for a public takedown in 3 weeks." Ethan walked to the window, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Why didn't Gerald catch this?" "Because he was too busy trying to keep me out of the building." Ethan turned back to her, eyes sharper now. This is why you're here," he said. "You saw what no one else could." "What no one else would." He picked up the phone. "Call an emergency board session. I want legal, PR, and MA in the conference room by 10 Ban Guan. We're rewriting this deal." Later that morning, Jasmine sat at the far end of a long conference table. Her chair wasn't labeled, no nameplate. But everyone knew who she was now. Gerald Stone entered last, face tight. Ethan didn't waste time. "We're pulling Clause F," he said, redrafting the language. Jasmine Carter identified a loophole that could have sunk this company. She brought it forward. "She's the reason we still own this deal." Silence. Then Gerald spoke, his voice clipped. "With all due respect, we vetted that clause thoroughly." Ethan's tone didn't budge. "No, you glossed it." "She caught what you didn't." He looked around the room. "From now on, all merger documentation passes through Jasmine's desk first." There were raised eyebrows, a few murmurs. One board member, an older woman named Margaret Green, leaned forward. "Jasmine," she asked, "how did you learn to spot something like that?" Jasmine met her gaze without flinching. "I've been taught to read the fine print my whole life," she said. "Because people like me don't get second chances. We have to get it right the first time." Margaret nodded, slowly. "Good answer." After the meeting, Gerald cornered her in the hallway. "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts." Jasmine didn't flinch. "I don't need the spotlight," she said. "I have the truth." He blinked, caught off guard. "And unlike you," she added, "I don't need a title to make a difference." She walked away. That evening, Ethan found her alone in the lab. He placed a folder on the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Your official appointment," he said. "Director of Legal Innovation. Full salary, full benefits." Jasmine opened the folder, stared at the offer. "I thought you said I didn't need a title." "You don't," he replied. "But they do. And next time someone questions why you're in the room, this will shut them up." She nodded slowly, then smiled. "Thank you," she said, "but we're not done yet." "No," he agreed. "We're just getting started." In that lab, surrounded by whiteboards, blinking servers, and stacks of empty coffee cups, Jasmine didn't feel like a visitor anymore. She was the reason the building was still standing, and this time they knew it. 2 hours after the Lawbridge launch, Jasmine Carter sat alone in a side conference room at Whitmore Tech. The cheers had faded, the cameras were gone, but her heart still hadn't settled. She'd done it, stood on stage, told the truth. Didn't flinch. The applause was thunderous. But now came the harder part. Being seen was one thing, being trusted was another. A knock at the door broke her silence. Ben Ramirez, one of the UX developers, stepped in holding a tablet. "You need to see this," he said, voice trembling slightly. He flipped the screen around. On the homepage of a major tech outlet was a still image of Jasmine at the podium, eyes focused, back straight. The headline read, "The future of law is here, and she wears sneakers and speaks truth." The embedded video already had 1.2 million views. The comments section scrolled like water. "This girl's a genius. Where's her JD? Why hasn't she been hired by the White House yet?" Affirmative action at its finest. This is what tech should be doing. Jasmine handed the tablet back to Ben. "I don't care about trending," she said. Ben smiled. "That's why you are." She pulled out her phone. Over 100 messages. One from her old debate coach. "Told you the fire never left." One from her high school principal. "You've made this city proud." One from her mother. "I cried." But one message made her stop. Darius Whitmore himself, who hadn't texted her in months, sent only, "Board's asking for a meeting today. You ready?" She typed her reply without hesitation. "Always." By 3 p.m., Jasmine walked back into the same boardroom that once questioned her right to be there. This time she sat at the head of the table, not beside Ethan, not as a guest. As the one they were all here to listen to. Margaret Green cleared her throat. "Miss Carter," she said. "The response has been overwhelming." She glanced around the table. "Federal agencies have reached out. Community leaders. The mayor's office. Even members of Congress. There's serious interest in scaling Lawbridge nationally." Jasmine nodded slowly. "But," Margaret continued, "some board members feel it may be prudent to bring in external leadership, someone with policy experience to co-lead the next phase." Jasmine didn't flinch. "I appreciate the concern," she said, "but I'll remind you every major decision, every line of that app passed through my hands. Not out of guesswork, out of necessity." She leaned in. "I built Lawbridge because I lived the gap it's trying to close. And with respect, I will not be managed into silence by someone who's never stood where I've stood." A younger board member asked gently, "But with federal funding at stake?" "Then it's even more important," Jasmine said, "that the person leading this understands the people it serves, not just the systems around them." Ethan sat back, pride quietly shining in his eyes. Margaret folded her hands. "Then we'll follow your lead. But be prepared. What's coming won't be easy." "It never has been," Jasmine replied. That afternoon, walking through the glass corridors of Whitmore Tech, Jasmine noticed something strange. People smiled at her, not politely, not awkwardly, but genuinely, like they finally saw her, not as a risk, not as a headline, as a leader. Back in the lab, Ben waved her over to the main screen. "You're going to want to see this." The display showed a breaking news banner. "President's office reaches out to Lawbridge. National collaboration underway." Jasmine blinked. "They want to pilot it in federal community centers. Free." Ben grinned. "You just got federal." But Jasmine didn't smile. Not yet. Instead, she walked out the back door of the lab, into the alley, where the air was cool and quiet. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in almost 2 years. "Hello?" came the cautious voice on the other end. "This is Jasmine Carter," she said. "Remember me?" A pause. Then, "Of course I remember. I saw your speech." It was Professor Diane Morgan, her former pre-law mentor from Emory. "I didn't finish what I started," Jasmine said. "You just finished something bigger," Professor Morgan replied. "I want to come back," Jasmine said. "Not because I need the degree, but because I want to finish what I had to leave behind, on my terms." Professor Morgan was quiet for a long beat. "Your seat is still here," she said. "It always was." Later that night, Jasmine returned home. Jordan was on the couch watching her speech again. "You really said all that?" he asked, eyes wide. She nodded. "And I meant every word," he grinned. I told my teacher my sister made an app that's going on the president's phone. She laughed. First time I've ever made national news with no makeup and sneakers. He leaned his head on her shoulder, still looked like a boss. Jasmine closed her eyes. Let it sink in. She wasn't here because someone gave her a seat. She was here because she built the table. And now, everyone wanted a chair. It had been almost a year to the day since Jasmine Carter slid a crumpled contract across a diner counter and dared a billionaire CEO to underestimate her. Now, she stood on a makeshift stage in a community center in Birmingham, Alabama. No spotlight, no press wall. Just folding chairs filled with students, single mothers, pastors, elders in Sunday best on a Wednesday afternoon. Behind her hung a hand-painted banner. Lawbridge, free legal education for everyone. In the front row sat a mayor, a congresswoman, a local reverend. But Jasmine's eyes stayed on the teenagers in the back. The ones with hoodies, earbuds, crossed arms, the ones who reminded her of Jordan. She took a breath. You ever been told to sign something without knowing what it meant? A ripple of quiet yeses moved through the room. An older man called from the back. More times than I can count. Jasmine nodded. That's why Lawbridge exists. Because I watched my own mother sign away a payment plan she didn't understand. I watched neighbors get evicted, arrested, silenced, not because they were wrong, but because no one told them what a clause meant. She held up her phone. This app won't fix everything, but it's a start. It puts knowledge where it's needed most in your hands. Soft applause followed. Afterward, people lined up to speak with her. A woman asked if Lawbridge could help her contest a rent-to-own scam. A retired trucker said it helped him challenge a wrongful fine. A teenager whispered that now he understood the difference between a search warrant and intimidation. Jasmine stayed until every question was answered, every hug given. Later, she stepped out the back door for a moment of quiet. The southern air was thick, heavy with humidity and promise. Ethan Walker was waiting by the car, sipping sweet tea from a paper cup. You know, he said, you made 3 elected officials cry in there. Jasmine smirked. They'll be okay. He handed her a sealed envelope. Something else came in today. She raised an eyebrow. Another board meeting? Not quite. Open it. Inside was a short letter, handwritten. Neat. Dear Miss Carter, we are proud to inform you that your re-enrollment at Emory University has been approved with full scholarship. We've also renamed the Law and Social Change Fellowship in your honor. You're not just returning, you're building a legacy. The Dean's Office. Jasmine stared at the words, unmoving. You did this, she asked. Ethan shook his head. No. You did. I just made sure the world kept up. She pressed the letter against her chest. I want to finish it, she said softly. Not for the degree, for the journey. You've already taught more law than most professors ever will, Ethan replied. But yeah. Go finish it. That fall, Jasmine returned to class. No cameras, no interviews. Just a spiral notebook, a second-hand backpack, and the same stubborn hunger that brought her here. She also launched the Second Glance Foundation, a non-profit, offering legal literacy grants to students from underserved communities. The slogan, read it again, this time with power. In the months that followed, Jasmine testified before Congress about digital access to legal tools. She spoke at juvenile detention centers and shelter programs. She stood beside survivors of wage theft and housing fraud, not as a savior, but as someone who had once sat in their seat. And through it all, Lawbridge kept growing. One December night, just before Christmas, Jasmine returned to Old Town Cafe. Same chipped tiles, same jukebox. Same warm hum of fry oil and old stories. She sat in the booth by the window, the one where everything began. Ethan slid into the seat across from her, 2 mugs of black coffee in hand. You ever think it would go this far? he asked. She looked around. I didn't think it would go anywhere. He nodded. Funny thing is, neither did I. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of everything settle. Then a new waitress approached. Young, nervous, afro in a puff. She held a notepad and stared at Jasmine like she wasn't sure she was real. You're her, right? She asked. The app lady? Jasmine smiled. I am. The girl lit up. My aunt used Lawbridge. She got her job back after she was fired without cause. She said to tell you. Thank you. Jasmine reached out, gently took the girl's hand. Tell her she did it herself. I just handed her the flashlight. As the girl walked away, Ethan lifted his mug. To the ones who never got a second look, Jasmine lifted hers too, and the ones who made them look again. They clinked mugs. No fanfare. Just two people who built something that would outlast them both. Outside, the city lights blinked on. Quiet. Steady, like truth finally being seen. End of part 10 and the story. Jasmine Carter didn't rise by being chosen. She rose because she refused to stay invisible. Because she turned knowledge into a weapon for people, not against them. She didn't climb the ladder. She built a whole new staircase, and then she invited everyone else to take the next step. In a world that often confuses prestige with wisdom, Jasmine Carter's story reminds us that true brilliance doesn't always come wrapped in degrees or corner offices. Sometimes it walks in quietly, wearing a diner apron and carrying a notebook filled with ideas the world isn't ready for yet. Her journey teaches us that justice must be accessible, not just to those who can afford lawyers, but to everyday people who've been silenced by fine print and fear. She showed that lived experience can be just as powerful, if not more, than textbook knowledge. For older Americans, her story is a call to remember that it's never too late to make an impact, and never too early to uplift someone who sees the world differently. Sometimes, the one who's overlooked becomes the one who opens the door for everyone else. Jasmine didn't wait for permission. She built the path herself. And in doing so, she proved that truth, courage, and service to others are still the most powerful credentials a person can have. Let that be a lesson to all of us. Never underestimate the quiet voice that refuses to be silenced.